Assalamu alaikum. This is Hena Zuberi, and you're watching Muslim Network News. Our top story tonight is about anti-Arab and anti-Muslim bias on one of the world's biggest social media platforms. Facebook is being accused of anti-Arab and anti-Muslim bias by its own employees. The issue has been raised in relation to Israel's latest onslaught against Palestinians, Gaza, and Al-Aqsa Mosque earlier this month. The employees of the world's largest social media platform say that it has a pro-Israeli bias. They pointed out that content in support of Palestinians was more often than not slapped with a sensitive content warning before users can access certain posts. In contrast, Israeli perspectives on the attacks have no similar alerts. About 30 employees have filed internal appeals to the company. They're asking Facebook to restore content on its platform as well as on Instagram. They say the material was improperly blocked or removed. Last month, similar concerns surfaced in a lawsuit in Washington, D.C. Civil rights group Muslim Advocates initiated legal proceedings against Facebook and its top executives. They accused them of allowing anti-Muslim hate speech to run rampant on the platform. China's capabilities in artificial intelligence may be too advanced for the United States to catch up with. President of Microsoft, Brad Smith, raised this concern in a recent interview on BBC. Over half of the 770 million closed-circuit television cameras around the globe are deployed in China. 40,000 such cameras with advanced artificial intelligence are installed in China's Uyghur region, occupied East Turkestan, alone. Some even detect human emotions. Chinese patent in artificial technologies issued in 2019 exceeded the numbers of patents issued in the United States. Eric Schmitz is the chair of the U.S. National Security Commission on Artificial Intelligence, or AI. He has warned that beating China in AI is imperative. Schmidt believes that the U.S. is in a geopolitical strategic conflict with China. He warns that democracies around the world will be threatened by the domination of Chinese expertise in artificial intelligence. Have you seen reviews of vaccines online? Russia has made an overt attempt to spread lies about Pfizer BioNTech COVID vaccine. Using a fake public relations agency based in the United Kingdom, it offered money to influencers to tell their followers the Pfizer vaccine has caused hundreds of deaths. The agency called Fez claims to be an influencer marketing platform connecting bloggers and advertisers. Popular YouTube influencers in France and Germany have posted emails sent from Fez confirming their request. These influencers were offered large fees, and the PR agency implied that it had a very large budget at its disposal. LinkedIn reports that Fez management comes from Moscow, with connections to an agency reportedly founded by a Russian entrepreneur. So be careful watching reviews. Being pro-Palestine can get you arrested in the world's biggest democracy. Police in the Indian state of Uttar Pradesh arrested a Muslim man for posting a pro-Palestinian message on social media. An Indian man named Yasser Arafat posted a message lauding the courage of Gaza residents on his Facebook account on May 19th. He was immediately trolled by Indian supporters of Israel and within hours arrested by local police the following day. His original post mentioned that every house in Gaza will fly the Palestinian flag on Friday in defiance of Israeli aggression. That post was misinterpreted by some of his 1.7 million followers who thought that he was asking his own town in Uttar Pradesh to fly the Palestinian flag. Trolls then asked why he was asking the Palestinian flag to be flown on Indian homes. Uttar Pradesh police have a history of arresting and abusing Muslims. This was after the state's government fell into the hands of the Hindu nationalist ruling party. In a similar anti-Muslim case, on May 24th, another Muslim was attacked and beaten by Hindu vigilantes who accused him of transporting cow meat. Salim Shakir runs a transportation business and sells other kinds of meats. He was falsely accused of carrying cow meat by the Hindu vigilantes. Cows have a sacred status in Hinduism. The slaughter of cows and sale of their meat is banned in many states in India, including Uttar Pradesh. After reporting his abuse at the hands of the vigilantes, police in Uttar Pradesh arrested Shakir instead of arresting his attacker. Qatar has pledged $500 million for the reconstruction of Gaza. Qatari Foreign Minister Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdulrahman Al Thani made the announcement after the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. Qatar often serves as a mediator between Israel and Hamas. It has offered similar aid in support of previous ceasefires. Qatar's aid will rebuild basic services and homes that were destroyed by Israel's airstrikes that began in last week of Ramadan. The onslaught destroyed and damaged hospitals, clinics, homes, as well as water and electricity infrastructure. Egypt has made a similar pledge of over $500 million for Gaza's reconstruction. Over 200 Palestinians, including 66 children, were killed. No amount of money is going to bring back the deceased or reverse the trauma that has been inflicted upon those who survived. French President Emmanuel Macron acknowledged France's responsibility in the 1994 genocide in Rwanda. He was visiting the Kigali Genocide Memorial in the country's capital when he made the statement. The memorial is the final resting place of the 250,000 victims of the Hutus' mass murder of the Tutsis. While Macron acknowledged France's responsibility, he stopped short of giving an apology. Dafroza Gautier, a researcher of the Rwandan genocide, was very disappointed that Macron did not clearly apologize. France has been accused of militarily supporting the French-speaking Hutu regime, which killed 800,000 Tutsis in 100 days. France is also accused of a genocide in Algeria, for which it has still to apologize. The Canadian government came up to higher standards. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau formally apologized for the internment of Italian Canadians during the Second World War. Canada interned over 600 Italians after Italy declared war in 1940. Over 30,000 were also labeled enemy aliens. They were fingerprinted, scrutinized, and forced to report to local registrars once a month. There are 1.6 million Italian Canadians, one of the largest Italian diasporas in the world. Canada issued a similar apology in 1988 for interning more than 22,000 Japanese Canadians during the same time period. Human rights groups are calling on big oil to further cut ties with Burma's military dictatorship. French fossil fuel giant Total and America's Chevron announced that they would suspend dividend payments to the junta from a large gas project. But advocacy groups said 90% of the money the junta makes is from the Yadana gas field, a joint venture with Total and Chevron, and the gas itself continues to flow. Burma's military took power in a coup on February 1st. It disposed Aung San Suu Kyi and other leaders of her National League for Democracy, declaring the November 2020 general elections fraudulent. The army has killed over 800 people and arrested over 3,000 in subsequent protests to the coup. In a move to support diversity, Vogue magazine has appointed Rauda Mohammed as editor of their Scandinavian publication. Mohammed is a Somali-Norwegian model whose protest against a proposed ban on the hijab in France went viral in April. She posted an Instagram message with "Hands off my hijab" written on her hand. Mohammed will become the first hijab-wearing editor of a major fashion magazine with an international following. The Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad has once again won the election for a fourth term, with 95% of the votes cast against two virtually unknown challengers. It may sound funny, but can be a life and death decision if you're in Syria. More from Ali Khalaf and Saleha Farouk on Bashar al-Assad, who's been in power since 2000.
It is no surprise to see Bashar al-Assad winning yet another presidential election in Syria. He is a bit behind Saddam Hussein, though. In 2002, Saddam Hussein won with 100% votes. Why they even do these so-called elections are unknown. These fake elections were partially the reason for the Arab Springs. A leaked video from Syria shows the election staff stuffing votes for Bashar al-Assad. No wonder the results show that Assad won with 95.1% of the votes cast. Who dared to run against Assad, and who are the 5% who voted against him? Well, names don't matter. There is a so-called tolerated opposition. They are long dismissed by the real opposition leaders, who are forced out of Syria. The US, Britain, France, Germany, and Italy said the poll was neither free nor fair. The vote took place only in parts of Syria that are back under government control. It excluded the millions of citizens living in the rebel-held province of Idlib and in the northeast of Syria that is controlled by US-backed Kurdish forces, which together make up almost a third of the country. After 10 years, more than half of Syria's population has fled the country or been internally displaced. The war in Syria has left an estimated 500,000 people dead and has devastated entire cities.
Islamic architecture is part of a beautiful tradition, from Timbuktu in Mali to Kashgar in eastern Turkestan, from Andalusia to Dhaka, Bangladesh. It carries some unique features. One such feature is the mihrab. In the following report, Ali Khalaf and Saleha Farouk share the ins and outs of a mihrab.
Mosques are by far the most representative of Muslim architecture, and some of the most common features of a mosque are a dome, minaret, member, and a mihrab. The word mihrab in the Quran refers to a place of worship. Nowadays, mihrab is a prayer niche in the front wall of a mosque where an imam stands to lead prayers. It indicates the direction of Mecca, towards which all Muslims pray. The direction of Mecca is called the Qibla. So, the wall in which a mihrab is set sometimes is called the Qibla wall. No matter where a mosque is, its mihrab indicates the direction of Mecca. Therefore, a mihrab in India will be to the west, while in the United States, northeast. Mihrabs vary in size, but they are usually ornately decorated. The mihrab originated in the 8th century. This is the time the famous mosques at Medina, Jerusalem, and Damascus were built. Most prayer rugs also have a mihrab, a segment of the design shaped like a niche.
Coming up next after the break is our in-depth analysis segment. So stay tuned. We'll be right back after these messages.
If I could be you, and you could be me for just 1 hour. If we could find a way to get inside each other's minds. Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes. Well, before you abuse, criticize, and accuse. Walk a mile in my shoes.
Despite the development of a COVID-19 vaccine, millions around the world will not have access. We need a vaccine that's free and available to everyone, everywhere. It's time for a people's vaccine.
Welcome back. In the wake of the George Floyd murder, Gandhi Mahal restaurant was set on fire on May 28th in Minneapolis. Owner Rohel Islam went viral for remaining steadfast in his call for justice. 1 year later, he's working to rebuild for the community. For details, let's go to Saliha Farouk, who's with him. Over to you, Saliha.
Thank you so much, Hena. I appreciate that. Today, we're very happy to be joined by Ruhel Islam, who is the owner of the Gandhi Mahal restaurant. Thank you so much for being here with us today, Ruhel.
Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Okay, so just to recap for our viewers today, shortly after your restaurant in Minneapolis was brought down in a fire last year, you immediately started to make plans to not just rebuild your restaurant, but also try to rebuild the neighborhood around you, of course, the neighborhood that surrounded your business at that time. How has the community helped you and your family to restart your business?
Thank you for the questions. Well, after we've been gone through a lot during the pandemic time, coronavirus problem, then we suffer for injustice issues here. And in my life, I discover that words have power, especially those unscripted words actually come from depth of your heart. I was very disturbed by the murder of George Floyd, and Gandhi Mahal restaurant was just, you can say, like a 200, 300 years away from that 3rd Precinct police station. And we opened up our space to treat people injured in the protest and uprising. Also, we were eventually we were told that we had to leave because of adjacent building, on fire. And so we left, and early in the morning, when my daughter told me that our restaurant was burned down, and I replied to her, like, we are deeply connected. We value people of our property. And also I said, let my building burn. Justice needs to be served. And Black lives should matter. Since 2008, beginning of our restaurant, we started in 2008. So me, my brother, my sister came here. We came here as a stranger, but last 12 years, we work hard through this restaurant, through our participation in democracy, our climate movement, other building community around. We build community through this restaurant. And we have, our community is still alive, still there for us. So right after burn down, next day, even the pandemic time, I start feeling a sense of community, we belonging to, we build this community there for us. But when our buildings burned down, I saw people came together, cleaning. I saw people are marching, more white people will come out to help, support, and with the poster, the Black Lives Matters. I see all colored people, Native American people, black, brown, all came together as a community. That was really some kind of culture I'm very familiar with. I grew up with. When I grew up back home, we grew up as a community. And I felt that kind of sense of community here. As you know, probably that the way I'm coming from originally, Bangladesh is a ground zero for climate change. And Minnesota is ground zero for movements, any movements. People fought here, someone they don't know, they fought for their rights. And justice was very important part of my life. We could escape from a lot of other. We are survivor of all this problem America facing here now. All this problem, police brutality and everything. And also, I always remember the Brother King says, "Injustice anywhere is threat to justice everywhere." I am keep thinking about that all the time, and also, that connects us to what I practice as a religion, as a Muslim, the Islam. This also teaches us same thing. And I found more freedom here to participate in democracy, speak out for your right and stuff, And right after that, I saw people came together, raise fund for us, clean up area. Then within 5 months or 6 months, like last year to October, we opened up a temporary takeout location called Karini Hari, only to serve to people, only do takeout and delivery. At the end, I'm a chef. I'm here to share my family recipes to the world. When you are hungry, you angry. You need to eat food.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we are, dedicated to bringing you peace by pleasing your palate. And our system is not fully fed, therefore is out of balance. The remedy is to be fed in such a way that your body comes back into a balance, not with artificial food, but with something that truly nourishes you. So fully fed community are those that welcome all at the table, where education, healthcare, housing, economic opportunities are available, where you are fed spiritually and you do not have to live in the fear. And God's eyes, all people are equal, even it's written in our constitution. So I feel more, Islamic in this country by reading the constitution, protecting us. Only we all follow the constitution. That will make us, that will make us or help us to get justice. People need to follow that.
Of course.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That's quite inspiring, and also especially how the events of the George Floyd murder had affected you and the people around you, which brings me to my next question. Your restaurant, of course, is called the Gandhi Mahal, and when it was up and running, it always had a strong commitment to diversity and inclusion in the way that you describe. So the Gandhi Mahal even had a very unique sign, we read, that carried a special greeting for that welcomed everybody that came into the restaurant. In your future plans, especially with the rebuilding of your restaurant, how do you plan to carry on this legacy over into your new establishment going forward?
Yeah, I'm here right now, we have a blank canvas. So I'm dedicated myself to build the 21st century building, which is with labor of love. It will make sense, more sustainable than ever. And the building, we build, make sure it's a green building, energy efficient, self-sufficient. All the stuff we had in our program we have in our, in our restaurant during last 12 years, the social justice, food justice work, climate justice work we did, racial justice, restorative justice. We want to continue that with collaboration with neighboring places. We probably collaborating with Pinjia World Theater. Together, we'll be building their mission and our mission, very similar, to bring people together in a build community. So we will be doing it together, building a better building together. And when I say better, that means we'll restore restaurant, of course, and also with greenhouse, even fish, in the basement we had, we'll bring that back with better quality, better environment. Even maybe she's on the roof. We don't know what will happen. We're planning going that direction. Another thing, we are really taking our time, because I feel like it will take a lot of time, because demolition process took almost a year for us. Then we have to make a good plan. That's why my targeting is 2-3 years, 4 years, probably to that much time. In the meantime, I have a temporary location. We signed lease for 4 years, and that Gandhi Mall is filled up with the good soil. Now we started. Last Eid during Eid, 13th of May, we celebrated Eid, and we reactivated area with celebration. What we are doing, which right away we are growing food all around the place. It's like a 30,000 square foot of space, and we built a stage in the place to reactivate and bring people together and do the healing work done, because this is what we need. Our neighbor, we built it for the last 12 years now, need to come back in normal life, and which is we're trying to do that. And we already have had Eid event. Today we have another events coming, the memorial events we will be hosting there. And basically it's a community garden, a community gathering place, outdoor community gathering place, for what? Have conversation and dialogue. I believe that we can solve problem, we can build it better with conversation and dialogue. And in the meantime, we'll enjoy outside weather, outdoor weather, and bring people together. And we have to do that. One of the main thing is building community. I care about community, and we'll continuously do that. And we're involving community in our process so that they have their opinion.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you so much for getting into my next question, which was actually how you plan to rebuild the community and the different initiatives. So that's wonderful to hear. Just wrapping up and going on to the closing of the interview here, that as you might know, people in the United States, but especially in Minneapolis, have been through so much pain and so much emotional exhaustion, as you can definitely understand or relate to, following the murder of George Floyd last year. Since then, have you noticed any other community level changes around you? And at the same time, what changes do you hope to see in your community that can either benefit yourself, your business, as well as the people around you?
Yeah, in the murder of George Floyd, truly what I'm seeing is, first I see a lot of people was very angry, young people. They participate, they protest. And then I see the sense of belongings, people coming together. There was no division. I think the murder of George Floyd united all race of people together. They came together, and now people are saying Black Lives Matters. They're working toward justice. Justice is happening. They're changing laws. Election is coming. A lot of accountability is there. People asking tough questions to the decision maker, policy maker, elections. And I'm hoping that we can really build a better, peaceful community, and where we all are fully fed. Don't have to worry and tension about getting shot by police or feel unsecure in area. And this is a lot of work need to be done, and I'm hoping that's coming together. I never seen, this is the first time in my American life I've seen a lot of people are breaking their silence, which is a good sign. A lot of people stay silent. After that, people are speaking out, which is, it's very important to our justice. You cannot stay silent and speak out for the justice. This is what's happening right now. And, I acknowledge, like I see more people have a sign in the whole area, the Black Lives Matter sign. People lives and all sign everywhere. People are paying extra attention to those things, and this is how make us better. This is how we can build it better. And
wonderful. Amazing.
Thank
Yes.
you.
wonderful goals and initiatives from yourself. I wanted to wish you the best of luck going forward with your business. Thank you so much for being here with us today. Today we're here speaking with Ruhel Islam, who is the owner of the Gandhi Mahal restaurant. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me.
Our pleasure. Back to Hena Zuberi in the new studio.
Thank you, Saliha, and for your steadfastness, Ruhel Islam. Before moving on to our next analysis, let's take a quick break. We'll be right back after these messages.
Our fellow Americans.
Right now, the COVID-19 vaccines are available to millions of Americans.
And soon, they will be available to everyone.
The science is clear. These vaccines will protect you and those you love from this dangerous and deadly disease.
They could save your life.
So we urge you to get vaccinated when it's available to you.
That's the first step to ending the pandemic and moving our country forward. It's up to you.
Dad, they took over my bedroom. Come on, come on. Okay, Dad. 1, 2, 3. Dad! You saved me. Dad?
Are you okay?
I'm fine, dear.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need at aarp.org/caregiving.
Welcome back. On the international arena, solidarity with the Palestinians against Israeli oppression is raising to a new level. Why are people using boycott, divestment, and sanctions to target Israeli apartheid? For a detailed analysis, let's go to Dr. Amina Al-Din, who is with racial justice activist Bill Fletcher Jr. Over to you, Dr. Amina.
In a continuing discussion of what's happening in Israel-Palestine, we have with us today a well-known writer, author, activist, Bill Fletcher Jr. And I want to thank you for being with us today. Your resume is too long. I'm sure not long enough for you, but you have written recently an article in response to someone writing about kind of the necessity of occupation, but how it's destroying Israel's understanding of itself as a state, issues about whether Israel, with this occupied mentality, is actually a democratic state. So can you just tell our audience a little bit about the article you wrote? And it's, you know, as a respondent to another article that was posing some interesting questions. I don't know if you remember the article because you write too much.
Indeed. I've been writing quite a bit about Israel and Palestine. Actually, let me go to the core of your question, though. I do not think that it is possible to have a democratic state that practices apartheid.
Okay.
I think that it's a contradiction in terms. The only way that it can be a democracy is sort of the way that Athens, in the thousands of years, was a democracy. It was a democracy for a few, but most of the people were slaves. So I don't call that democracy.
Right.
And I think that what we're looking at and have been looking at in Israel was the creation of a settler colonial state in alliance first with the British and then with the United States that involved the removal by any means necessary of the indigenous people. That's not a democracy. Now, it may have the trappings of democracy, parliament, elections, etc., But if you look at apartheid, whether it's in Israel or what we saw for years in South Africa, it basically meant that an entire segment of the population was in effect excluded from legitimate participation in the system. That's not a democracy.
Well, let me hear from you first what that occupation does, because in your article you mentioned stuff like the differentials in education, public education for the kids. You talked about the discriminatory housing, but you talked about some things that I think that we don't ever think about: marriage. And I'm saying, what about marriage? I mean, does Israel dig that deep into what Arabs are permitted to do?
Oh, absolutely. One of the best ways to illustrate the hypocrisy behind the Israeli system is to look at the most recent blow up in Israel. I'm not talking about the rockets from Hamas. I'm talking about what happened that triggered revolts throughout Israel among the Palestinian population. And it revolved around Palestinians living in East Jerusalem who had been living in homes that had previously, pre-1948, been occupied by Jews. And in 1949, Jerusalem was divided into East and West Jerusalem. East Jerusalem was controlled by Jordan. West Jerusalem was part of Israel. So the original occupiers of those homes left East Jerusalem and went into Israeli territory. Okay, when Israel seized East Jerusalem in 1967, it basically said from that point on that settlers could move in, and they had laws in Israel that provided that land that had been owned by Jews prior to 1948 could be reclaimed, but that land owned by Arabs could not be reclaimed. So the Palestinians that were driven out of their homes from the period of 1945 to 1949, most of whom thought that they could return to their homes after the war ended, were not permitted to return. They were denied the right of return. And what I'm hoping your listeners appreciate is that the right of return is not something specific to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. It is part of international law. It is part of international law that people that are forced one way or another to leave their homes as a result of war have the right to return and reclaim. Israel has systematically denied that. And that's what led to this blow up in East Jerusalem just recently. So you have an apartheid system that differentiates the conditions of the Palestinians from those of the Israeli Jews. And as you said, there's issues of marriage and education, who gets what kind of land. If an Israeli Arab marries a non-Israeli, the non-Israeli does not become a citizen of Israel. I mean, it's you can't make this stuff up.
I mean, this I'm listening to you. It's so incredible. On another show, I talked with a rabbi here in Chicago who is a chaplain of Hillel group here, a large group across universities. And one of the things he stressed was that God gave us the land. So we have a right to be here, and that was supposed to supersede the thousands of years that others had lived on the land with no accommodations for them. The Palestinian that I was talking with talked about, yeah, but you've had these UN conventions and certain things have been laid out for all who fight wars, and I think that goes back to what you're talking about of this right to return. But what do you see that is happening on the ground. As a writer and a researcher, what I see as an everyday citizen is, no, we're getting ready to exterminate you.
Well, I think that that's right. You're absolutely right. I actually want to go back to this issue, though, that you raised in the beginning about God supposedly giving the land to the Jews. Well, one of the questions is, to whom did God give the land? I mean, really, in a sense that there was no memo from God that came down that was CC'd to other people that said, you have a right to this land. It's a particular interpretation of the Bible. The second thing is that the Palestinians are the direct descendants of the people that were there for thousands of years.
Yeah.
The Israelites, the people that had been there, they're the direct descendants. And some became Muslims, others became Christians, some remained Jews. So the question then is, to whom was the land given?
Right.
To European Jews? I mean, this becomes really, really complicated. But the other thing that I want to add to this is that it's important to make note that in every settler colony, the settlers always claim that God gave them the right to the land. So whether you're talking about Ireland, when the English settled there, conquered the Irish, the indigenous Irish, and set up a settler colony, they claimed that they were given the direction by God. When European settlers came to North America, they claimed that God had given them the land. When the Boers, who later became known as the Afrikaners in South Africa, invaded South Africa, they claimed that God had given them the land. And I keep asking the question, if God gave them the land, then why didn't God tell the people that were living there to get out of the way?
Yeah.
I mean, what kind of God are we talking about? And that's when you realize the kind of sophistry and hypocrisy that we're dealing with. You're absolutely right about there are international agreements that have been very, very clear about the right of return, the issues of apartheid and the definition of apartheid, the demand that Israel pull back to the borders that it had in early June 1967 before the war, all of which have been ignored by the Israeli government. Why should they be excluded from international law?
So what's going to happen? I mean, how do you evade the law? Who is going to enforce the law?
You've asked a $64,000 question. You have. And I would say that, I'd say what should happen and then what might happen. I mean, what should happen is that the international community should block all weapons sales to Israel and should boycott Israeli products, et cetera, until the Israelis actually discover democracy and the respect for international law. That is what should happen.
And they discovered democracy.
That's right. That's right. Discovered.
Well, would you, in this, please give us an understanding of BDS? People see the acronym and they don't understand what it means.
Boycott, divestment, sanctions is actually is a movement, and in effect, it's a strategic approach that was begun in the anti-apartheid struggles around South Africa, and it was utilized after 2005 by Palestinian activists, and it basically says that there needs to be massive nonviolent pressure on the state of Israel to respect international law and respect freedom and self-determination for the Palestinians. So it means that products that come from Israel should be boycotted, that there should be sanctions on the behavior of Israel. For example, weapons. When we see the kind of massacre that the Israelis have carried out against the people in Gaza, there should be penalties. There should not be weapons flowing to Israel. This was not about self-defense. This was about a massacre. And divestment is just what it is, that calling on corporations and banks to pull back. Now, this is not as a strategy. As I said, it's not limited to Israel. It began, in effect, in connection with the apartheid regime in South Africa. But you have variations of BDS that are used in other arenas as nonviolent approaches to putting pressure on oppressive governments. And
so
in this
you
case,
have
Israel.
people imposing sanctions where the UN, or enforcing sanctions where the UN won't, literally.
That's right, or compelling your respective government to abide by that. And in our case, what makes it difficult is that there's a historic alliance between the U.S. government and the Israeli government that goes back to the founding of Israel, and it is related to Israel being seen as a reliable ally to advance U.S. foreign policy interests in Western Asia, or the so-called Middle East.
This is a mess. But I think that I know I just retired from being a wonderful professor that fought with BDS, but I looked at, for many of us, then the clamps came down. Oh, you can't lecture here. Lecturing contracts are rescinded. All kinds of things are happening. So there's a reach somewhere, because we have a Christian component that figures that Israel must have the land too. So we're pushing against lots of different forces with lots of varying interests.
Well, that's correct. And I would just say that there's good news and bad news. So the good news is that the climate in the U.S. around Israel and Palestine is definitely changing. I have not seen in my lifetime the sort of mainstream support for Palestinians that I'm seeing now.
Yeah.
And so that's very important. But it's also the case, as you were saying, that there are other forces, including so-called Christian Zionists, who basically believe it's important to support Israel because Israel is the route to heaven for Christians. It is a very perverse
So what do they
theology.
think is going to happen, that the Jews are just going to let them have a route to heaven?
Yes, they do. They basically believe that when Jews control the Holy Land, there'll be the second coming of Jesus, and when Jesus reappears, that Jews that have a conscience will become Christians, and those that don't will go somewhere else. I mean, that's what they believe. And so therefore, their attitude is we do all we can to support the hegemony of Israel over the Middle East. It is completely cynical, but it has a very real political impact in the United States.
We have about a half a minute left. So what would you like to leave us with?
That we're looking at a situation where the world opinion actually makes a difference. That isolating the Israeli political class and making it clear that the world will simply not tolerate what's being done to the Palestinians is making a difference. It is freaking out the Israeli regime, who are seeing themselves more and more isolated around the world, which is why Trump was trying to get various Arab countries to sell their souls for a few pieces of gold. But because at the base, there's growing anger. And what we have to keep in mind is that on this planet, there will be no peace until there's justice for the Palestinians. It simply won't happen.
Well, I want to thank you from Muslim Network TV News for being with us today, Mr. Fletcher, and hope to talk to you again.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Back to you, Hena.
Thank you so much, Dr. Amina and Bill Fletcher. That's all from our Washington studios tonight. Hope you had a lovely Friday. Keep watching Muslim Network TV. For more, visit our website, muslimnetwork.tv. Assalamu alaikum and good night.